What's kind of wild is how fast this sequel became real. Right after Superman proved itself at the box office, and more importantly with audiences, James Gunn didn't hesitate and officially locked in the follow-up. The movie is titled Man of Tomorrow, and it's already dated for July 2027. That alone says a lot. DC Studios finally looks confident again. David Corenswet is coming back as Clark, Nicholas Hoult is returning as Lex, Rachel Brosnahan is still Lois Lane, and the big headline casting is Lars Eidinger as Brainiac, one of the most dangerous villains Superman has ever faced. Before Eidinger was confirmed, the internet did what it always does and went absolutely feral with casting theories. Matt Smith was a huge fan favorite, Giancarlo Esposito's name was everywhere, and a lot of people expected James Gunn to bring back Chukwudi Iwuji after Peacemaker and Guardians, so when Eidinger was announced, it surprised a lot of people, but in a good way. He's not an obvious pick, which is exactly the kind of thing Gunn likes. Around that same time, Gunn talked a bit about his comic influences for Brainiac, and it was clear he's pulling from all eras. The early Otto Binder sci-fi stuff, the darker and scarier Marv Wolfman takes, the animated versions, and even the newer Absolute Brainiac. That tells you right away this isn't going to be a one-note villain. Whatever version we get, it's going to be layered, unsettling, and very different from anything Superman has faced on screen before. James Gunn is also fully locked in again, not just overseeing things from a distance, but actively writing and directing Man of Tomorrow himself. That alone is a big deal, because it means this sequel isn't being handed off or course-corrected by committee. On the music side, everything points to John Murphy and David Fleming returning to score the film, which makes a lot of sense. Their work helped define the emotional identity of the first movie, mixing heroic themes with a modern edge, and keeping that sonic continuity is important if DC wants this universe to feel cohesive. Story-wise, the core concept is now pretty clear. Superman and Lex are forced into an uneasy alliance to face a threat neither of them can handle alone. That threat is Brainiac, the cold, tyrannical alien android whose arrival instantly elevates the scale of the story. This isn't just another villain attacking Metropolis for personal reasons, this is a cosmic-level force with motives that go far beyond Earth, and that's exactly why Clark and Lex have no choice but to put their hatred on pause. One of the coolest confirmations so far comes from the teaser artwork released by Jim Lee alongside the title announcement. That piece strongly suggests that Lex will finally suit up in his classic, comic-accurate war suit. This is something fans have been waiting decades to see done properly on the big screen. Not a watered-down version, not a quick tease, but the real deal. If that armor actually plays a major role in the film, it instantly reframes Lex as a physical threat as well as an intellectual one, especially when standing next to Superman against a being like Brainiac. Isabel Merced has also confirmed she's returning as Hawkgirl. That's another sign that the Justice Gang isn't just a one-off concept. While there's no official confirmation yet on Eddie Gathegy's Mr. Terrific, Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner, or Anthony Carrigan's Metamorpho, it would be genuinely surprising if at least some of them didn't show up again. Gunn clearly enjoys building ensembles, and these characters already exist in the world. Bringing them back, even in limited roles, helps sell the idea that this universe is populated and evolving. There's also a lot of quiet excitement around Supergirl. Some storyboards spotted in the Superman special features strongly suggest that Millie Alcock will factor into this story in some way. Nothing is officially announced, but the implication is hard to ignore. With her solo movie on the way, it would make perfect sense to use Man of Tomorrow to further position her within the larger DCU. She doesn't need to dominate the story, but her presence alone helps bridge the gap between grounded Earth-based conflicts and the wider cosmic threats looming in the background. There's also strong talk that Brainiac is going to be heavily reimagined for the new DCU. That shouldn't surprise anyone. Gunn has already shown he's willing to remix characters while staying true to their core. And when you look at what else is coming, especially the Supergirl movie, the puzzle pieces start lining up. Supergirl really feels like the connective tissue between Superman and Man of Tomorrow. Kara appeared in the first movie, her solo film is on the way, and it fits Gunn's pattern of introducing characters early so they can naturally slide into larger events later. Her role in the sequel isn't confirmed, but narratively, it almost feels inevitable. If you think about it, Supergirl makes perfect sense as the first character to notice something is wrong on a cosmic level. Maybe she's the one who realizes someone out there is watching Earth. Maybe she warns Clark that a massive threat is approaching, even if she doesn't know the name Brainiac yet. That alone would raise the stakes without spelling everything out right away. And there's a funny bit of DC history here too. For years, there were rumors that Henry Cavill's Man of Steel sequel was supposed to be about Brainiac and was even rumored to carry the Man of Tomorrow title. That plan obviously fell apart and eventually turned into a messy crossover that crammed in Batman, Wonder Woman, Doomsday, and way too much mythology at once. But nobody ever confirmed that. Now, years later, the title finally exists for real, and it's part of Gunn's Gods and Monsters saga. He keeps saying he's not doing rigid phases like Marvel, but let's be honest, the structure is still there. You can feel the roadmap. What really works in DC's favor is timing. The sequel is coming while the memory of the first movie is still fresh. Superman didn't make $1 billion, but it didn't need to. People liked it. It gave audiences a hopeful, heroic Superman again without erasing the past. Snyder's version exists, it did its thing, and it has its fans. But this new take feels lighter, warmer, and more in line with what many people grew up loving about the character. That goodwill matters, and DC is smart to build on it immediately instead of waiting 5 or 6 years and losing momentum. At the same time, Gunn made it very clear that Man of Tomorrow isn't a traditional sequel. It's technically a continuation, but the story stands on its own. You won't need to rewatch the first film to understand what's happening. That's an interesting choice, and it tells you this movie is thinking bigger. Same cast, same world, but a new kind of story. Everyone outside the core trio is still a question mark, which keeps things flexible as the DCU keeps expanding. The biggest mystery was always the villain, and honestly, it stopped being much of a mystery pretty fast. Gunn outright said that Superman and Lex will be forced to work together against a threat far bigger than either of them. That alone screams Brainiac. Still, the bigger picture is clear. Man of Tomorrow is moving forward smoothly, and compared to DC's recent history, that stability is almost shocking. And that leads to the big question. Why Earth? Why now? Brainiac has had countless motivations across the comics. He studies civilizations, collects knowledge, hunts advanced technology, shrinks entire cities, and preserves them like trophies. Kandor is the most famous example, and it's practically inseparable from his mythology. Earth checks every box, especially now. Gunn has an enormous sandbox to play in because Brainiac has been written so many different ways over the decades. But at his core, he's always been a cold, calculating conqueror, and introducing him immediately shifts the scale from local heroics to galactic consequences. One of the most exciting elements here is the forced alliance between Superman and Lex. In the comics, this has happened more times than people realize, including in very recent storylines. Gunn clearly enjoys uncomfortable partnerships, and the dynamic between Corrin Sweat and Holt was already a highlight of the first movie. Pushing them into a situation where they have no choice but to cooperate adds instant tension. Gunn has talked before about loving 80s comics, All-Star Superman, Birthright, and those classic Brainiac arcs. He's also mentioned drawing inspiration from things like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings when it comes to complex relationships and large-scale conflicts. If Man of Tomorrow leans into that, this could feel like a political thriller wrapped in a superhero movie. All signs point to a modernized take on Brainiac's assault on Earth and Metropolis. This also feels like the perfect opportunity to finally bring Lex's power armor into live action in a meaningful way. Fans have been waiting forever to see that done right. The story almost writes itself. The enemy of my enemy becomes my ally, but only temporarily. Every deal is fragile. Every scene carries the risk of betrayal. If Gunn pulls this off, Man of Tomorrow could easily become the first true event movie of the new DCU. What makes it all work is how naturally it ties back to the first film without directly continuing it. By the end of Superman, Clark fully steps into his role. He's still learning, still imperfect, but he becomes a symbol. And that kind of emergence doesn't go unnoticed. A new power suddenly appears on Earth, strong enough to change the trajectory of an entire planet. From a cosmic perspective, that's not just interesting, that's alarming. This is where the Brainiac fits perfectly. He's been watching. Earth has been on his radar for a long time, but Superman is the variable that breaks the equation. One being shows up with the potential to reshape civilization. For Brainiac, that's irresistible. Scientific curiosity, strategic calculation, and collector instinct all collide at once. In classic fashion, he could arrive to study Metropolis, shrink it, and attempt to add it to his collection just like Kandor. That makes his arrival feel earned, not random. It's a direct response to the events of the first movie. Even if Man of Tomorrow doesn't function like a traditional sequel, Lex's role in all of this is just as important. No matter how much he despises Superman, Luthor is smart enough to recognize an existential threat. If something out there can wipe out Metropolis, Superman, and Lex himself in one move, hatred takes a back seat to survival. That moment of mutual understanding is where their alliance begins. They don't trust each other. They never will. But necessity forces them into the same room, fighting on the same side, at least for now. That tension is pure storytelling gold. In the end, Brainiac's motivation being tied directly to Superman's emergence is about as classic as it gets. Superman becomes too visible, too influential, too powerful, too fast. Earth stands out. Metropolis stands out. And that attention comes with consequences. Superman is the reason the threat arrives, and he's also the only one who can stop it. That creates a clean, logical chain reaction that makes the world feel alive and interconnected. Man of Tomorrow doesn't just move the story forward, it expands the universe, raises the stakes, and makes it clear that every heroic action has a ripple effect far beyond Earth.